This lecture is on ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. You might think, what the heck is ISO 9001 and 14001? Well, first, ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. Now, you might say, that's iOS. Well, this is the English version. ISO is the, I don't know if it's French. I can't remember exactly where it is housed in Europe, but they say things differently in the Romance languages compared to English. So ISO in English stands for the International Organization for Standardization. And so you can get the idea there that this is an organization focused on standards in whatever, business, manufacturing, computers. ISO gets involved in internet standards. At least they did once it was released internationally. The internet was a US military invention initially that was released for government and university use that became what we now know as the internet. But ISO gets involved in lots of things. And so I'm going to talk about two of the standards, or two of the groups of standards within the ISO. And these are relevant to manufacturing, and that's why I bring them up. So ISO 9001 and 14001 are among the ISO's most well-known standards ever. They are implemented by more than 1 million organizations in some 175 countries. Please don't memorize those numbers. For one thing, I don't care about you memorizing the numbers. And secondly, these data are a little bit outdated. I believe the last time I updated the numbers in this PowerPoint was about 5 years ago in 2016. But nothing has changed in the standards. This is the current standard. So ISO 9001, 2015, meaning it was 6 years ago, helps organizations to implement quality management. So one take-home message, 9001 is about quality management. 14001 helps organizations to implement environmental management standards. Okay, one is about quality, one is about environmental management. So, as I mentioned just a second ago, ISO 9001 is for quality management. Quality refers to all those features of a product or service which are required by the customer, not you, not things that make your life better, not things that the government makes you do for regulatory purposes or food safety purposes. What does the customer actually need in their product? Quality management, on the other hand, means what an organization does to A, ensure that its product or services satisfy the customer's quality requirements, and B, to comply with any regulations applicable to those products or services. Quality management also means what the organization does to enhance customer satisfaction and achieve continual improvement of its performance. Now, in one of my business classes, I talk about continuous process improvement, or CPI. And that's a very important concept in business. You shouldn't assume, I've got this down, our company's great, our company's #1, we know what we're doing, we're the best. And then just keep doing it over and over and over again without ever thinking about what you're doing. You should always be looking at ways to improve quality, improve cost savings, improve efficiency, improve environmental compliance. If you heard that, that's Sammy, one of my kitty cats. Anyway, continuous improvement is and important concept in business that I think too few businesses really give sufficient thought to implementing. So 14,001 is for environmental management. So environmental management means what the organization does to minimize harmful effects on the environment caused by its activities, to conform to applicable regulatory requirements, and achieve continual improvement of its environmental performance. So this can be done because your customers need it, demand it, or it can be done for marketing purposes. It can be done because of your company's philosophy of environmental protection. There are lots of reasons why a company might want to implement either of these standards. So both 9001 and 14,001 are generic standards. Generic meaning the standard can be applied to any organization, large or small, whatever its product or service is. Doesn't matter if you're a small contractor building custom homes, or you're Ford Motor Company, or you're a farmer. It doesn't matter. Or you do home loans. It's a service, not a real product. You can apply these anywhere, in any organization, in any industrial sector or business sector, and whether it's a business enterprise, a public administration, or government department. So you can use these standards in, maybe it's city council operations. Anything you can possibly think of. Generic also signifies that no matter what the organization's scope of activity, if it wants to establish a quality management system, ISO 9001 gives the essential features. If you want to do it, the tools are there. Or if it wants to establish environmental management, ISO 14001 gives the essential features. Everything is there in a generic form that you can take and adapt to your organization. So, what is a management system? A management system specifically means what the organization does to manage its processes or activities in order that its products or services meet the organization's objectives, such as satisfying the customer's quality requirements, complying to regulations, or meeting environmental objectives. So how do you manage it? What are your processes? What do you do? What are the steps your company takes? What are the departments you have? How do you coordinate among departments? How do you do paperwork? How do you do billing? How do you make that bag of salad or that engine block? How do you actually do it? Where do you source your materials? All of these things. These are all of the activities that your business does. And that is your management system. The processes are your management system. So to be really efficient and effective, the organization can manage its way of doing things by systemizing it. In other words, creating a system, make everything cookie cutter, a recipe. You follow a certain set of steps, of rules, and you don't leave out any important details. You really put your company under a microscope. Every step in the process, every shipping, receiving, bills payable or accounts payable, accounts receivable, your vendors, how do you find vendors for products you need? How do you find customers? Every phone call you make to follow up on an order, everything is organized in some sort of process or flow. Not only that, but everyone needs to be clear about who's responsible for doing what and when they do it, how they do it, why they do it, where they do it. Everything has to be laid out in such a way that it's really clear and everybody does things in the same way. Consistent. You're well trained, like you could think of it like a sports team. You know, if you're thinking of a sports team, everybody has a position, everybody has their responsibilities. And if one person is off doing their own thing, the team doesn't function. And if you look at your company in a similar way, where you're running very intricate plays and you're trying to achieve success in quality, success in environmental management, rather than just success in, you know, scoring a touchdown, your goal requires the team is clearly divided in terms of their responsibilities and how the system works. And part of that system is profit, clearly, in a capitalistic company. Management system standards provide the organization with an international state-of-the-art model to follow. And so the ISO is extremely well respected internationally because they do take a lot of input from companies, big and small, from every sector, and they have advocates and advisors, and they come to these standards with extreme levels of expertise and information from successful companies around the world. And their last standards were 2001, and they updated them in 2015. And there's a lot of really, really good information and generic processes that you could adapt to your company and make it more efficient and more profitable. So large organizations or ones with complicated processes could not function well without management systems. And so there's always a management system in place for almost any company. Certain small proprietorships, very small companies can kind of wing it. You know, they're doing little odd jobs and whatever. They don't necessarily need a management system to survive. But the larger you get, the more important that management system becomes. You can't become a large company without it. Companies in fields such as aerospace, automobiles, defense, healthcare devices have been operating management systems for years. And I would say not years, for generations. They just are there. Now, in the modern sense of management systems and systematizing it in an ISO fashion, it's still been decades. So the ISO 9001 and 14001 management system standards now make these successful practices available for all organizations. And you can take or leave what you want. Now, to be certified, that's different. We'll get into that in a minute. You can use this, any company can use these practices. It's publicly available information. But in order to get certified, that's another level. You need to be in full force. You need to pay for certification and follow all of the rules within these if you want to be certified. So both 9001 and 14001 concern the way an organization goes about its work. They are not product standards. They don't tell you what to do. They're not telling you how to make a quality automobile or how to make a quality bag of salad. They don't care what your product is. That's up to you. You and your customer need to define what your product standards are. That's between you and your customer. The idea with 9001 and 14001 is developing processes to achieve those quality standards more efficiently, or those environmental standards more efficient. It's not service standards. So if you're a company that is a pest control advisor operation, you don't sell a product, you just are a service. You go out there and you give recommendations. Again, that's between you and your customer who's hiring you, and certainly the Department of Pesticide Regulations in that case, which deals with the regulations about pesticides. They are process standards. They're standards on how to establish processes for any company to operate. There are a set of rules for how to establish your processes, how to manage, not what to do, not how to make something, not how to provide your service, how to manage the process of management. They can be used by product manufacturers and service providers, which I've already said. Processes affect final products or services. So yes, even though it's not about product standards, it's not about service standards, it's not about what your company is providing, it's about the processes. But those processes of management will affect your products. It will affect your service. And the goal is to make those products and services better. ISO 9001 gives the requirements for what the organization must do to processes affecting quality of the products and services that are being provided. So there are standards. It says you must be doing these things. Your organization must have management processes in place that follow a certain set of rules, of steps, of ways of going about doing business that focus on quality and or environmental protections. 14001 gives the requirements for what the organization must do to manage processes affecting the impact of its activities on the environment. So we already have regulations in place through the EPA, through the California Air Resources Control Board, through regional water control districts, through all kinds of agencies that tell us what we can or can't do, what we must do in order to comply with environmental laws and regulations. But this goes beyond the minimum. The laws and regulations is the minimum threshold. You have to do this to be in business or you are in violation of the law. But you can do more. You can be better than the minimum required by law in terms of environmental standards and in terms of quality standards. And that gives you a leg up in a number of ways and potentially might make you a better bet for some of your customers that like that attitude, that want to see that attitude. So let's take a short break and I'll be back to talk about certification and registration.